The disqualifications of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc from the US Grand Prix raise an unsettling thought. How many other Formula One cars were illegal but not caught? What makes this even more intriguing is that in an area of the car that teams are very mindful of there being no squeeze room for error, two of the top squads tripped up on the same race weekend. The justifications for the rule violations appear to be quite evident, which is why both teams had to simply face their destiny with the stewards once the planks were discovered to be sufficiently worn away. But if the top teams couldn't get it right, what about the others? Did other teams escape disqualifications this weekend? And does this raise the possibility for the other teams to ask for more inspections next time, just to try their luck for a better race result? Hamilton's Mercedes and Leclerc's Ferrari were two of just 4 cars to undergo a physical floor and plank wear inspection check. Max Verstappen's race-winning Red Bull and the McLaren were the others. Lando Norris finished third. Both these cars, however, passed the test. But what exactly is this test? Because there could be no more than 1mm of wear between a freshly installed plank and one that's been through all the rigors of a race, the tolerance between success and failure over plank legality is small. The FIA can evaluate wear on the plank at 4 50mm diameter holes bored into the surface at specific points indicated in the technical specifications to ensure compliance. In the case of Leclerc and Hamilton, the rearmost hole failed the test. This hole must be located between 825mm and 1025mm ahead of the rear axle line on the car's center line. The drill holes in the plank are encircled by titanium skids that are flush installed. These provide additional wear resistance and are also strictly controlled in their design. The FIA has been closely watching this area with this new generation of cars, and it has already given many technical directives in reaction to anomalies in their design. Following the disqualification, one intriguing debate point was that the FIA did not inspect the plank on all of the cars. This is usual procedure, since the governing body would be unable to examine conformity on every aspect of every car after every qualifying and race. That is why, in order to ensure compliance, it chooses random elements from random cars each time. Max Verstappen's RB19, Charles Leclerc's SF23, Lewis Hamilton's W14, and Lando Norris's MCL60 were all picked to have their planks examined on this occasion. Red Bull and McLaren were granted the go-ahead, but Ferrari and Mercedes were not. But what about the remaining 16 cars? They might all be lawful, all illegal, or some combination of the two. The point is that we have no idea. We don't know about the second Ferrari that inherited a podium spot since the disqualification of the other car did not necessitate an automated inspection of their respective sister cars. There is no guarantee that Carlos Sainz's Ferrari or George Russell's Mercedes would have been found to be illegal, as setups can differ slightly between cars and different approaches from drivers to curb usage. For example, can mean a crucial few tenths of a millimeter difference in plank wear by the end of a Grand Prix. The technological reasons for the plank's excessive wear are straightforward. The cars were running too low to the ground, which scratched them during the Austin weekend. The cause of this is a choice of rear ride height, which teams experiment with each weekend. However, it may be influenced by fuel loading and even DRS use as the aero load enters and exits the car. On a Grand Prix weekend, teams often have plenty of time to get their ride height into a sweet spot where the plank is not in danger of being worn away, yet the car is low enough to offer optimal performance. This balance has proven more difficult to achieve at sprint events, when teams have only one practice session, rather than the standard 3 of an F1 weekend, to lock in their settings before qualifying. Because of the compressed time frame, it is impossible to cover the qualifying and long-run programs that are normally done. Any ride height calculations done during this FP1 session must account for the additional competition running that has been added to the weekend schedule, since there will be more competitive sessions taking place once the car settings have been locked in. Furthermore, once the cars are in parc ferme, teams are unable to monitor the plank wear as easily as they typically can, so there is some guessing involved. After the race, Ferrari disclosed that it had spent time during FP1 adjusting the ride height of its cars in order to identify an ideal range for the race weekend, after it was evident how the bumps were affecting things. However, it definitely did not elevate the car sufficiently. It was also argued that the weather may have played a role in how things turned out. A larger wind intensity than predicted, along with a change in direction, may have caused the cars to be pulled down deeper in portions of the track than it had in practice, forcing the board onto the ground. Another potential influence would be tyres, since it is possible that the two cars that experienced plank difficulties were ones that ran long opening stints. We know that when tyres wear, there is less tread left, which not only diminishes grip, but also allows more heat to escape. This can result in lower pressures when tyres near the end of their life, resulting in a lower ride height. Both Hamilton and Leclerc raced lengthier initial stints on the medium tyre to establish a strategic counter to Verstappen and Norris. This might have led to excessive plank wear during this stage of the race, when the car was still carrying a lot of fuel. But surely more cars would have had trouble with their planks, right? After all, 50% of the inspected cars failed the test. Ultimately, we'll never know if any of the other cars that received points in this race violated the plank regulations, or any cars that aren't in the top 10. In reality, examining the floor and plank isn't always on the must-do list. There appear to have been no plank inspections, for example, in Qatar or Japan, and none in previous races earlier in the season. The latest physical floor and plank wear checks appears to have been performed post-race before the US Grand Prix in Singapore on Verstappen's Red Bull and Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin. This is likely due to the perception of plank wear being much lower in the subsequent races. This is related to the FIA's ability to target problem areas as needed. And as the disqualified teams admitted in Austin, the structure of the track and the sprint weekend format clearly presented the possibility for some plank issues, suggesting that authorities intended to especially inspect the leading cars for compliance. However, due to the selective scrutineering method, cars further down the grid may have gotten away with it, simply because they were not scrutinized. The FIA has access to a tremendous quantity of data, including the new aerodynamic oscillation metric introduced last year. Maybe this helps officials figure out where to search, but even so, it's merely a hint. It demonstrates nothing. That is precisely the objective. The FIA had grounds to inspect several of the leading cars and discovered that 2 of them were unlawful. It's not a huge jump to believe that some of the other 16 failed the same tests as well, so why not be more certain? It's crucial to realize that this is, to some extent, merely a frustrating truth that we must accept. While the FIA's post-race inspections are thorough, they are not and cannot be complete. They shouldn't be. Some things just do not warrant inspecting every portion of every car. Short of storing the cars for days after the event, some caution must be used. For obvious reasons, every car is weighed, and every car's beginning tyre pressures are verified. In Austin, however, only Sergio Perez's Red Bull, Norris's McLaren again, and Yuki Tsunoda's AlphaTauri were exposed to a battery of surface aerodynamic components and bodywork testing, including the floor edges and front and rear wings. Simplifying scrutineering is a required practicality. There's also an argument for not revealing to teams when certain technical rules will be checked, otherwise someone would try to cheat the system and participate in a race where rules will not be checked. The random check method serves as a fair disincentive to taking liberties. However, many people believe that plank wear should always be studied because of the consequences it has for how low cars can run, which is possibly a tangible performance boost. And what happened in Austin may be used to show how scrutineering can be improved. Isn't it possible, reasonable, and just plain fair to allow enough time or develop an appropriate system to examine the planks of more than a handful of cars during such races? Or are we supposed to accept that in races where there is obviously a high risk of a specific rule being broken, the great majority of the field will have a possibility of getting away with breaching the rule, the 1 or 2 unlucky checked cars get thrown out for? The solution is not to inspect every car for every rule in the book. However, scrutineering can very certainly be enhanced and strengthened in some way. The concept of subjecting all 10-point scoring cars, as well as those that subsequently inherit a point scoring position, to the same set of tests appears to be a good starting point for compromise. And it would seem natural to discover a means to question the sister car for any that are determined to have committed a technical violation. There is certainly a system to selecting and choosing battles in post-race scrutineering, which should be improved. The line needs to be drawn somewhere, and what occurred in Austin demonstrates that it's not exactly in the right spot in terms of plank checks. What are your thoughts? Should the FIA change the rules surrounding failed tests at the end of a race? Or are things good as they are right now? And would you support other teams going back to the FIA to try and change the race results afterwards? Let us know in the comments down below.